Teleshikues të ALB UK TV, mirë se vini në programin Zëri Diasporës. Me ju sonte kam prej Shtetit Bashkuar të Amerikës një njohës të mirë të politikës ndërkombëtare dhe lëvizjeve ndërkombëtare në përgjithësi, njëkohësisht është një punëtore e cila punon për një organizatë të madhe që mirret me vëzhgimet politike në botë. Zënjusha quhet Valone Pllana, njëkohësisht ka studiuar në Harvard University dhe ka diplomuar atje në shkencat politike. Ms. Pllana, we're going to go in English language due to your language being a bit more difficult in Albanian since you're born and grown and studied there. Thank you very much for being with us. What do you think about the matter that happened in Albania recently with the earthquake?
Përshëndetje, faleminderit. Unfortunately, the tragedy that has happened in Albania, it is a heartbreaking situation, and it has gathered support from Kosovo, from Albania, and the diaspora as well. There have been millions of dollars and euros raised to go towards the cause. And as heartbreaking as it is, we have seen extreme support from the Albanian community across the world. That has come in a timely manner and has assisted with rescue missions as well as supporting those victims who have been displaced, left homeless, and some unfortunately have even lost family members and friends.
It is interesting that the Albanian community everywhere it is, including within Kosovo, Albania, and countries surrounding Albania, there is Albanians there, are very much way ahead of the governments of each country with the support. And usually they happen in every kind of situation that Albania has been found. Whether it's an issue that we are lack of leadership, and then the people kind of see that self-responsibility to act as fast as possible, or we are a nation that actually we act quite fast under those circumstances?
We are a nation that reacts quite fast in those situations, providing support and relief. Many of the Kosovars and Albanians, Macedonian Albanians, they have raised money and they have contributed to funds without even asking whether those funds were legitimate or not. It just shows how much trust and support we provide very swiftly. But also the Albanian government has provided a great rescue mission in a timely manner as well. So that is impressive just as well.
Help us to understand a little bit more about, since your international relation, it's quite kind of, it's something that you studied for quite long and have done research, and you work in fact in that as well. Why we as Albanians, we found it quite difficult to connect with the rest of European nations, as well as the worldwide, we having difficulties, because, such as in this case, we were refused to enter the dialogue, to enter the European Union.
Well, although both North Macedonia and Albania have met the criteria of the Copenhagen, however, it's not as much to do with whether they have done a lot of work, these countries, in terms of the technical and political dimensions, as much as what is happening in the internal politics of these countries. For example, in France, Emmanuel Macron, he had stated that admitting these two countries, the ethnic tensions and conflicts would be potential within the European Union, and questioning whether these countries are ready to be able to work under the norms of the European Union. However, this is a nationalistic tone, perhaps, and believing that these countries are going to always engage in wars. But looking at other countries that were actually involved in the Yugoslav war, such as Slovenia and Croatia, they both have been very successful members of the European Union. And Albania and Macedonia were not directly involved in the Yugoslav wars. So stating that these nations have the tendency to always engage in wars is really not factual. But what is more truthful towards why these countries were not admitted lays more into the politics of France and the Netherlands, which is another nation that has not approved the negotiations. I mean, the recent years we have seen both in France and in the Netherlands a nationalistic tone taking toll. Also, Macron, he has the election coming up in 2020. So he's afraid of a backlash and perhaps that admitting these countries, the voters, the French voters, will penalize him at the poll. France is becoming more reluctant towards the European Union integration, EU enlargement, admitting migrants as well as refugees in the recent years. So this has to do with that side of things more than what Albania has done or has not done.
Well, interesting enough, it's kind of, if we look at the leadership in France and in actually some of the countries in Europe, they struggling to convince their own nations that actually everything is going in correct way due to the immigration. Yet, did we as a country, Albania nor Kosovo, as a leaders, have we helped by not having decent politics towards our own nation to convince them that actually Kosovo and Albania and Macedonia are the countries to live, rather than seeing quite lots of movements towards the people wanting to leave and to go to Europe?
Well, we have not seen as much of an increase, and particularly in Kosovo, the applications for asylum seekers have dropped by 50% in the last 2 years, while the applications from Serbia have increased by over 70% according to the Schengen visa website. So it is not as much as if we are seeking asylum or not, because as statistics show that is not the case. In fact, they have dropped tremendously. But it might have to do also with the large Muslim population in both countries that is sort of given a feel that European nations do not want to include additional countries that are religiously diverse as Kosovo and Albania.
Well, the thing is that whether it's religion or not, it's a kind of interesting question raised. But Albania, Kosovo, and Montenegro are right in the center of Europe. It's kind of how easy it's to exclude, like altogether 7 million could be around three countries. How difficult it is to exclude from the European Union, considering that they are right in the center of Europe, technically.
Yes, I mean, there is a common saying that where does Europe start? If you ask the Germans, they say that right at their border, and Austrians, that Hungary is not part of what actually Europe is and the European Union stands for.
What I mean by that, Valona, is that we are surrounded by the European, by the countries that are already the member of European Union. So we are like simply we are in center. Whether you're calling Europe or whatever they're calling is different question, but we are surrounded by the members everywhere.
Yes, of course, and that's what I'm saying is that each country has a different idea of where Europe starts, not necessarily geographically, but in terms of our way of thinking. And there is a belief that there is a disconnect between the Albanian society and community and the rest of Europe, which is also false and based on superior-inferior complex, perhaps.
What is the American opinion on this kind of exclusion of Macedonia, Northern Macedonia, and Albania?
Well, funny enough, I don't think American politics involves as much as in engaging in the foreign affairs or foreign politics. of Europe, they are more in terms of France, perhaps indifferent of that part of the world, but they only concentrate on the Brexit or what is happening in France rather than what is happening in the Balkans. Even Russian interference in the Balkans has not been a thing that is included in the everyday news in the US. It is spoken perhaps by the Congress and by leaders one-on-one or in meetings. However, it's not a mainstream subject here. So,
changes in the European Parliament that had happened in the new administration, do you think that's going to take a different lead towards those kind of decisions and the way they're going to work with this kind of situation? Because I think it is a lock that need to be unlocked at some point.
Well, the same problems persist, so I'm not sure based on the solution whether they are going to change tremendously. However, seeing that there is a threat lurking from Russia and China right on the corner, they might just have no other way but actually to have reforms and include the Balkan countries a little bit more. Rather than have Russia and China come in at an opportune time and insert their influence.
On those kind of circumstances, what do you think that Albanian and Macedonian leadership can do to actually convince the European Union that they are a potential member and they have to be taken seriously?
Well, they've been trying very hard. It looks like it, although the corruption rate needs to be taken care of and addressed much quicker than it has been. However, they have met all the criteria, so I'm not sure how much more they can do in a short period of time. And considering that Macron is already calling of changing the evaluation and how we admit members, that actually has stalled all the negotiations. So just to draft a new treaty might take years. And then the election in France in 22 that also postpones whether they are going to admit these countries or not. So we have a lot of external influences on the membership. However, both the Macedonian and Albanian government should concentrate more on having a better political compliance and inclusion dialogue between the opposition parties, as well as tackling corruption.
There was some kind of movements that Albania have done. Prime Minister Rama have kind of tried to get closer with the Kosovo government a few times, showing some kind of we're going to remove the borders. And then they came up with some other ideas, kind of every situation they measured it, trying to either push European Union to take the Balkans a bit more seriously, or they just wake up with some kind of new idea to keep the propaganda over the people that something is happening. My question will be, how well you think they are well analyzed, those kind of movements that Albania does, to actually get the attention of the European Union a bit more?
Well, there is that fear that if the Balkan countries are pushed against Europe and not admitted, they are going to have to form their own alliances. And Kosovo being a small and still a little bit vulnerable and a very young country, they're going to need protection. This also raises the question whether there will be a rise in nationalism between the Albanians creating or the wish to create a greater Albania, the Serbs also wanting to create a more inclusive Serbian community, taking the Republika Srpska and adding it to Serbia. So there's that fear of ethnic nationalism. If these things were to take place, there's a high potential of a new conflict emerging. And this fear might actually play in the favor of the Albanians and going towards an EU membership. However, hopefully they don't have to go that far, and they do not go that far.
Knowing that usually when the Balkans War had happened, the Albanians did not find themselves in easy situation, and every time that had happened, part of Albania has been cleansed and taken the land by others. How do you think that this kind of movements would help Albanians this time?
The movements in terms of creating a greater Albania?
Yes.
Well, they do not have the support of the European Union or of the US. That would be going against what they had started 20 years ago. However, somewhere down the line, hopefully we do have the will and the right to actually put these countries together if they wish to create an alliance. This is only applied to Kosovo situation. It's not applied to Germany and Austria, for example. If they wish to create an alliance, they can. And this is only a particular case for the Albanian community or the countries of Albania and Kosovo.
Do you think,
so it is an interest.
politically speaking, do you think joining the kind of healthcare system, joining the education system, joining some of kind of head that directs the nation towards the future, rather than every single kind of government that comes, whether in Kosovo or Albania or in region, we have the leaders making decisions without having any kind of intellectual elite, so to say, to consult of in long term how Albanians will find themselves. Do you think those kind of things those kind of links or connection hasn't happened so far seriously, rather than just talking about a physical movement of the movement, moving the border between?
A lot of the downside of the leaders in Albania and Kosovo is that they often think short term rather than long term, and how the political discourse will affect the countries. For example, just this year, we have seen the attempt to cancel the election in Albania by the president. And then when the election went ahead, the opposition party refused to participate, leaving the ruling party having no competition at all and winning 61 of the municipalities that they had gained. So this is a questionable election, whether it is legitimate or not.
Am I allowed to say?
But it goes.
Am I allowed to kind of compare to the behavior of teenagers in the government of Albania and Kosovo somehow?
Yes, of course. There's often a lot of name calling that goes on. For example, rather than criticizing an opponent based on policies that they proposed, there are calls that this person is stupid, or they're not capable of doing their job without any factual provided. So that always is astounding. And additionally, there are always these promises that sometimes it's not up to the Albanian leaders and Kosovo leaders. But on those promises, voters vote, and then they find out that that's not the case. And we've seen that just in the recent election in Kosovo, where voters actually did penalize: if you are not going to stand for what you say, that we're not going to vote for you.
Well, like, considering that, I mean, the election in Kosovo were complimented from every nation that know what democratic election they are. But seeing the delay that had happened, again, it shows the signs that old generation, they still kind of know the tricks of how to hold the people's vote kind of under the shadow of their opportunity to continue being power.
Yes, and this also is being seen by the world, and it is being applied to the evaluation, whether for visa liberalization or EU membership. So we have to be careful from these leaders because they can hinder the process, the democratic process, as well as our stance in the world and towards European integration. They often think short term just for their election and do not work towards having a dialogue and to provide actually solutions for the future of Albania and Kosovo.
So instead of their personal matters, to put the nation in priority, you'd say?
Yes, their elections are primary and the country sometimes comes second, unfortunately.
How can we as a diaspora, apart from just helping whenever they need it, how can we have an effect on leadership to consider a bit more seriously? Because I think diaspora, whenever intervene, they make the kind of they break that taboo of leadership to continue to do things in their own way. Is there any way we can think of what kind of way we can react this time?
Yes, of course. There needs to be a lot more engagement from the diaspora. We have people here in the US or throughout Europe. We can pick up on how these countries functions and we can learn from what they do wrong and what they do right and apply that to Kosovo and Albania. But also there are millions of Albanians in the diaspora. So we have the ability to influence the politics, influence elections, and actually call for more transparency. As well as we can provide activism to other countries to support both Albania and Kosovo.
So in a way, we have to come together as a nation, whether we are in diaspora or living Kosovo and Albania and everywhere, to actually have a say and being serious about forcing the changes through. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
What kind of benefit Kosovo will have with a visa liberalization if it happens for the European Union?
Well, first of all, they are Europeans, but they're unable to move around. The borders, anyone can come to Kosovo, but Kosovars can go just almost anywhere. In the long term, it will provide a little bit more of an economic benefit due to tourism, perhaps, and engagement in businesses and otherwise, and just going and seeing and visiting, being able to learn and see what is out there. In terms of the European Union, since they work under one economic standard or market, including Kosovo, there could be a little bit more economic development in Kosovo as well as for other countries. It could increase their economic benefit.
From experience of the Eastern European countries, whenever the borders had opened to the European Union, there was a massive movement of young people, middle-class people, and qualified that they move into Europe. Do you think that Kosovo, it is a small country that if that happened, then Kosovo will suffer by not having sufficient professionals staying there to actually serve the people itself?
That used to happen far more under the Milosevic regime. As second-class citizens, they didn't have opportunities to jobs and education. However, that has, as I mentioned earlier, the asylum seekers from Kosovo and migrations from Kosovo have decreased by 50%. So that is not the case. The young people, they want to remain in Kosovo. There is a will to continue rebuilding. There is a re-energized love for Kosovo. I do not believe that there will be a mass migration. There might be a little bit of movement, but not much that would make difference.
What is your opinion on the idea of the mini Schengen?
I am sorry, I accidentally disconnected.
I noticed you've been kind of disconnected for a few seconds. What is your opinion about idea of mini Schengen between the Edi Rama, Vučić and Zaev, the Prime Minister of Northern Macedonia?
This was initiated due to the slowdown in the accession talks. So what they are trying to reach is actually what would be under the European Union. That means free passport traveling from place to place. So they are trying to be in line and accomplish something without the union. On the positive side, this shows that these countries are trying to create relations and improve relations, work with one another, which is what Macron has criticized the Balkan countries. And for this, in short term, it might provide opportunity for smoother cross-border flow of imports and exports for Albania and other countries, as well as save money from the
Border control, yeah.
Exactly. And the flow is just much easier when you don't have lines waiting for hours and hours. On the other hand, this might not be so good for Kosovo. It is being isolated, and this is mainly due to Serbia's stance of blocking Kosovo from entering the international arena, as well as not recognizing the independence of Kosovo. So it leaves Kosovo behind yet again, and this might also directly impact the economy of Kosovo and the politics of Kosovo. So the negative side is that Kosovo will not be included, and it's also quite surprising that Edi Rama had even engaged in these talks without consulting with leadership of Kosovo first, and how it might impact the country politically and economically.
Seemed like that there was no consultation within with the Kosovo, nor with the international community, neither from any advisor if they have within Albania. There was no kind of communication. It was kind of wake up in the morning, dream overnight, try to put in practice. From the movement, it seemed like that, to at least to my kind of to the way I see it.
Yes, I think it was a misstep by the Rama. That's not something that I'm a fan of.
How that kind of, if we kind of remember ex-Yugoslavia, which you probably don't, there was a similar system, but considering that Serbia now have good ties with Russia, do you think that would help Russians to expand right into the Albanian seaside and the things that Albania can affect, and certainly national security as well, by allowing those kind of things to happen? We know that quite a few incidents had happened already in Montenegro, Macedonia, that has been avoided recently.
Yes, well, I was born in Kosovo and I lived through the war. I was young, but I do remember that period of time. And I remember also my father was engaged in political activism as a professor. He was arrested many, many times. And that Russian influence, even in the 90s, as Russia was having domestic problems, it was lurking in the background. There was the belief by Milosevic that NATO and the US would never bomb Serbia since it might start a world war, and that wasn't the case. Russia had problems in the 90s that needed to resolve first. However, now there is a renewed energy and it's coming back with a vengeance. We have seen the assassination attempt of the Montenegro prime minister that is linked to the Russian government, as well as the name dispute between Greece and Macedonia. It is said to be a propaganda that began by the Russian government. We have seen Russia send a train from Serbia to Kosovo that had inscribed in 21 languages Kosovo, Serbia, that almost started a war between the two countries. Their primary concentration in Europe or in the Balkans is to actually throw off these countries, create tension where the European Union is exactly questioning whether these countries are capable of being cordial and work towards a mutual goal. So they have been successful somewhat in the political influence that they have in the Balkans. And Russia having such good relations with Serbia, they can monitor the presence of the EU and the US in that part of the world.
Coming back to the Schengen visa, mini Schengen visa, whatever they're calling, which it's basically we as a Kosovans, we can't one way or another, we can't physically accept to have this kind of agreement with one country that actually they had a program of how to cleanse Kosovo, and probably they continue to have. How else we could look at this kind of perspective, or what the Prime Minister should have done, Albanian Prime Minister I'm talking about? Do you think it should have been raised an issue that Serbia is getting stronger with the weapons, military, engaging with the loads of, and actually, since they don't recognize Kosovo, we consider that it's an open option for intervention today or tomorrow whenever they seize an opportunity. Do you think would it be better to call for sanctions against Serbia to calm them down and to join with Croatia, Bulgaria, and other countries surrounding, or considering this kind of idea, which I think it's, well, it shows to be totally irresponsible?
Well, the deal between Russia and Serbia in the United States, it has been expressed as a concern. And there may be, if the arms are substantial enough to actually pose threat to the region, the U.S. is ready to place sanctions, whether it is visa or licensing on exports. And European Union usually follows on the footsteps of the U.S. So it's not just us thinking about it. The U.S. has already been one step ahead in considering that. So we need to do more in terms of why Serbia has been sort of successful, whether it is engaging in this mini Schengen without any sort of backlash. Since they do not recognize Kosovo, they haven't even attempted in prosecuting the crimes committed by the Serbian forces. There's well over 2,000 victims, civilians missing from the Kosovo War, over 20,000 rapes, and these are not conducted by rogue soldiers per se. This is with the knowledge of the Serbian government and a systemic way of ethnic cleansing through rape and instilling fear. So the sexual violence that hasn't been considered, the killings that happened of more than 12,000 Kosovars, there should be a lot more backlash, and we should force Serbia to actually come clean with these, address these issues before they are engaging in any negotiations, whether it is mini Schengen or entering for membership in the EU. So I'm quite surprised that the standards for Serbia have been so low.
Is it has been so low, or we did not have representatives that actually raised this issue as a serious matter?
Well, we do lack representation. We have Atifete Yayaga, who has been tirelessly working for Kosovo victims. We've also had a congressman from New York, Elliot Engel, who has addressed many of these crimes, as well as just recently, he went ahead before the U.S. Congress and demanded action for the Kosovo visa liberalization. So we have a lot of support. However, we need a lot of our people to actually engage and have talks, have conversations, and provide activism more, and not just rely on ambassadors and leaders. They are a handful, and there's only so much they can do.
What Kosovo government, if it's organized, obviously, it's well organized because we see fractions in different levels. What Kosovo government can do to actually be a bit more vigilant in this kind of environment to actually raise the voice a bit louder, to professionally to present our country?
As I said, perhaps, more lobbying in Europe and in the US, and stand more firmly on the ground against Serbia. We have seen that our leaders, sometimes they are way too easy. They give in, whether it is with moving the borders or transposing different territories with Kosovo and Serbia, rather than saying we are not going to accept this until we have resolved the issue and we have addressed the accountability on the Serbian side for the war crimes. We are not going to go ahead with any type of negotiations. So we've been way too lenient too.
Understand. What we have now, we have a new elected that we're hoping that they're going to confirm the creation of government. Mr. Kurti and also Vjosa Osmani. What do we expect from them, knowing that Kurti is very well kind of prepared, well, at least the way he talks. And Vjosa Osmani, she is a doctor in international law, to my knowledge. What kind of changes do you think they're going to present in international community, knowing that they are very, very well prepared to present every simple situation that Kosovo has been found on during this period of time without any translator, which means a lot?
Well, Vjosa Osmani, she has been educated here in the US, so by some of the top professors in the world. She has been part of drafting the Constitution of Kosovo, and she has a soft demeanor. However, she's incredibly intelligent and capable of diplomacy, and no wonder that she comes from the LDK, Rugova's party. So she will bring a lot of knowledge in how to address some of these issues. Meanwhile, Kurti, he's been an activist long before Kosovo's independence, stemming from the days as a student at the University of Pristina. So he's determined not to give in as easily. He's determined to have Kosovo's status recognized by Serbia and other countries, and taking Kosovo to be a strong, independent European state. So they both bring great balance and a great future for Kosovo.
How is the old elite of United States, whether it's Bill Clinton, Madeleine Albright, and others, seeing the Kosovo and Albanians in general, whether they seeing us as the nation we progressing forward to our future or backwards, and influence of third world countries into our country, which it's quite high risk?
Well, older leaders, they are very knowledgeable, and they remember Russia's influence and as well as Serbia's crimes and how capable they were committing genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina, multiple war crimes in Croatia and Kosovo. They are aware of it. They're also very proud. You often hear Bill Clinton and Madeleine Albright in almost every interview that they have talk about the success of Kosovo. What we have achieved in Kosovo in a matter of 12 years as an independent state, it is equivalent to some of the Eastern European countries that have had independence for many, many years. So it's regarded as a success story, as how democracy can progress and the transition between an old institution and a new one, or an old way of thought into a democratic one.
Any idea of, if we, for example, again, going back to Schengen visa, if we think of materializing our own friends, which is Croatia, is Montenegro, is Macedonia is with us in quite loads of activities. Bulgaria has showed quite a strong support. connection with Italy, which is nearest European country in a border that support us. Do you think that that has been materialized enough, or do you think we are just, as a country, creating some kind of talks, but not a real groundwork?
We often concentrate on countries that seem to have far more weight on their words, for example, France or Germany, but we don't provide as much as engagement in talks and how to actually have Bulgaria and Italy speak far more on our behalf. So we need to engage those countries to push for visa liberalization as well as EU integration.
One more final question. Albanian elite, whether it's position or opposition, they are basically have shown not so much of strength and kind of a real work to push Albania forward to make equal to the rest of the nation in Europe. There is quite strong signs that another party, as Vetëvendosja or Albin Kurti, is moving in Albania. How fast do you think that's going to teach a lesson to all parties that actually people thinking another option rather than them two, those two parties, let's say?
It might be a good thing, actually, if Albania falls in line with Kosovo's latest election, where if you are not pulling your weight and trying to engage in dialogue, you can actually have a political downfall from it. So hopefully Albanian leaders, they are able to stop being as stubborn as they have been and continue to look forward to Albania's future in the long term rather than just where their election stands.
The countries like Albania, Kosovo, do they engage enough the diaspora, intellectuals of diaspora to help them make decisions? Or they limit them just so they can do it their own way?
I haven't really seen, besides Albin Kurti talking about having Kosovars vote from diaspora that can't come and place their votes in Kosovo. Apart from that, I haven't seen much political engagement from the diaspora. Recently, perhaps a year and a half ago or so, Pandeli Maiko, he was in Boston, Massachusetts. Mostly what he talked about for the diaspora is actually to increase tourism in Albania and reconnect. However, not as much engagement in the political aspect of things.
Is there any kind of message that you specifically want to send to the people of Albania, leadership of Albania, Kosovo, and diaspora in general?
The leadership in Kosovo and Albania need to have a plan to engage the diaspora. If not, we've also been considering, a few friends that I have spoken, whether in the UK or here, we have considered how would we go about engaging the diaspora in the political aspect of things. But it would be great if the countries themselves invite us to whether to help or just be knowledgeable about what is happening over there, because we do feel at times a little bit left out. We have to go ahead and do our own research rather than have some information provided from a particular diaspora membership of some sort. While the diaspora...
Yeah, go ahead.
While the diaspora, I believe that we need, as your program is a great way to sort of spread the word and knowledge, but we need to also engage more.
It surprised me the fact that United States diaspora is strongest diaspora of Albanians everywhere, and their voice has been heard, and they made a massive change. Why can't they? How organized the diaspora there is to actually pull together the diaspora in Europe to have our representative in Europe as well, that we can work closely with the United States diaspora, so we can be a bit more mobilized to act in those kind of environments and changes.
I am not exactly sure how many organizations or anything of that sort are in Europe. Here in the US, there is MASS, which is an organization in Boston. We often raise money for health of families in Europe, or in Albania, sorry, as well as engaging in protest of what has happened in the war. So there are a few organizations here that do engage, but in Europe, I'm not very familiar whether there is such
Not
thing.
very much so. I mean, we have organization that helps in the case of an emergency, that collects some money and those things, but we don't have organization that actually raise the voice when we consider that something has been done against Albanians, or the leadership of Albania, Kosovo, if they don't hear our voice, to actually be a bit stronger to them and tell them, well, this is our people and we have a say as well, rather than the small organization that like acting, which is from day-to-day business, I'd say.
Yes, of course. As you say, there is a lack of engagement between the diaspora and the leadership in those respective countries.
Zënjushe Valone, faleminderit shumë që ishe në emisionin ton. Në rast se do në gjuhën shqipe diçka të thuash për popullatën gjithandej që ndoshta nuk e njohin gjuhën angleze, you're free to go for it.
Well, shpresoj që tragedia e fundit do të kalon shpejti. Jemi një komunitet shumë i fortë, edhe në diaspora, edhe në Shqipëni e në Kosovë. E kemi pasë sa shqiptarë prej Kosovës i kanë hapur dyert për viktimat e Shqipërisë, edhe besoj që do të kalojnë këtë, do të përmirësohet puna.
Falenderoj edhe një herë shumë. God bless United States of America and Albanian community there. You know that you always has been a voice for Albanians wherever they are, bigger than anywhere else. Your influence as a community have done loads for Albanians everywhere else, and we're hoping to continue and to copy you the way you have handled so far.
Well, thank you very much. I hope that we continue to make strides and building great nations.
Ishte Valone Pllana, prej Shtetit Bashkuar të Amerikës, njohëse mirë shkenca politike e cila studioi në Harvard University, na njoftoi për gjërat edhe opinionet e saj. Shpresojmë që intelektual të tillë, jo vetë që do të kemi nëpër intervista, po do të kyçen direkt në mundësinë dhe mënyrën e të ecjes përpara të kombit tonë gjithandej. Ju përshëndes, e miru pafshim në emisionet tashme tek Al UK TV në Zërin e Diasporës.